Alan Beam is the Director of the Australia Institute's International and Security Affairs program and joins us now. How are you today? Thanks for your time.
Not at all.
Firstly, what does it really mean for China to sign a security agreement with the Solomon Islands?
Well, it is a pretty big deal, Adrian. It's China's first move into the Pacific, into the South Pacific, as a major defence state. China has been active in the Pacific for quite a number of years as a small-time aid donor, and it's done a few useful things in development assistance. But this is a move of an altogether different calibre. It is the beginning of China demonstrating that it is a major power, that it has arrived in the South Pacific now, and that it has arrived as a security and law enforcement advisor. So it is a very significant move, and it has lots and lots of implications, not only for Australia, but for all of the other countries in the Pacific.
So let's talk more about that. How does this affect the balance of power in the Asia-Pacific region?
Well, the balance of power in the Asia-Pacific region has been changing for quite a long time, actually. And the reason for that is that a number of the countries of the South Pacific have been sort of sowing their oats. They've been demonstrating themselves to be much more independent, particularly on questions of climate change. Australia has been losing position in the South Pacific, particularly on climate matters, but also on the shrinking aid vote that we've been devoting to the South Pacific. And in the meantime, China has been building its reputation. It has been very much more active diplomatically. And for that reason, it's picked out the softest target, which is the Solomons, and has moved in a way that I'm not sure is completely in the interests of the Solomon Islands, but it is not in the long-term interests of Australia or Australia's friends.
We'll continue to watch that story. Let's focus on Ukraine at the moment and how the West in particular is dealing with the war right now. What have you made of it now that we're week 8, week 9 into the war?
Well, the war in the Ukraine has turned into a very dangerous phase now for several reasons. The first is that to this point, President Putin can't claim victory. And I think that is the reason that the Russian forces are now focused very much on the two eastern Russian-speaking states in the Donbass. And I suspect that they will be taken and that they'll be taken reasonably quickly because there's a very important date coming up, which is the 9th of May, which is the date when when Russia defeated Germany in the Second World War, and it is very, very significant that Putin is able to claim victory at that time. I think the second reason is that in many respects Russia has now gone for broke. It seems not to be worried about the willful destruction of so much of the civilian infrastructure, which I think is not in accordance with the Geneva Conventions, and for that reason could be assessed as a crime against humanity. But more than that, Russia has been prepared to commit what appear, at first sight at least, to be atrocities. And once you get into the business of widespread destruction of civilian infrastructure and the commission of atrocities, then you're going for broke. And for that reason, I think we're in a very dangerous phase. And we have to hope that if the Donbass is to fall, it falls quickly with as little further destruction of civilian populations as is possible and a clean end to what has been a very dirty war.
Alan, just briefly to finish, if we could, in terms of the end game, the possible end game for the war in Ukraine, everyone's watching now and thinking what it could look like. What do you think it can look like? What are the options here?
Look, the options are very far-reaching and they're very dangerous. From the Russian media at the moment, we have some clear signs that there is some contemplation of the use of both chemical weapons and of nuclear weapons. The Russian population is being slowly softened up for the potential use of tactical nukes. That would be such a huge step the implications of which we can't really determine at the moment. But it would be a step into a very dark unknown, the long-term consequences of which we just can't tell. But it will demand enormous diplomatic effort, not just by the Europeans and the United States, but also by countries such as Australia, who have a really deep investment both in the maintenance and protection of a rules-based order, such as it is, and in nuclear disarmament, which is now proving itself to be a very high agenda item. So keep watching this space, and let's hope that we have a government which is able to tackle that particular problem head on.
Alan Behm, thank you so much for your time and your insight today.
Not at all, mate.
The bottom 20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
It's no coincidence that we have a wages crisis in Australia.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.